Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
finding
No.
a code to life. I think life has its own code. Like, you ever see life hacks where someone makes ramen out of a Keurig? I'm like, there's definitely more life hacks in the world like that. Like, if you hit a jukebox 2 times, you turn into the Fonz or something. There's got to be something like that out there. I'm not just an idiot. I know.
No, it sounds like you have more hacks than the average person.
There's
Um,
people that do meditation to try and hack their mind to try and find their third eye. And I'm like, that's a secret. You find that later in life when you've figured everything out. And I don't know if anybody ever
mhm.
actually figures things out. Remember when you were a kid and you looked at adults and you're like, you have all the answers. And then you become an adult and you realize that person didn't know jack shit.
Yes, I identify with that. I will say that the one thing I didn't think my parents really had down is like it seemed they seemed very upset all the time, a lot of the time, and um, sometimes I would just sit around being like, why is this why is everybody so upset? Like it seems simpler than this, and why aren't we just happy? Just because so much in life seems so awesome to me. Maybe it was my perspective or my privilege. I don't know. That's a huge word right now, but I don't know. I just always thought the world was so beautiful, and there are so many cool things to get involved in and to explore that it just seemed weird that everybody was uh, arguing about things a lot. But as I got older, I can see why they argue about things. Because they're when you're around other people, it gets complicated. Life gets complicated. So
I
when
think
you're a
the
kid, it's not
more
as complicated.
I think the more you understand about the world and how things work is when you start to kind of like the little bit of the pixels start coming off your soul a little bit. Like, I remember before I even started this podcast, without talking to so many people, I was so simple as shit. Like, I mean, oh my God, ignorance is bliss. I was like, I'm just going to keep working out, getting a job, working, doing all this simple type of stuff. And then once I started understanding so many people's perspectives and getting, especially if you get involved in social media too, you get like contaminated a little bit where it's like, man, this is not as happy as I thought it was. I always thought like, oh, it was going to be simple, get a job, get a house, get this and get that. But then you realize there's like 1,000 steps in between. It's like making a model. It looks really good, an airplane on the picture, and then you start doing it and you're like, oh my God, there's so many fucking pieces that I was not expect. What do you mean I gotta paint it too? Oh, it doesn't come pre-painted. It's always like the, and then you're just sniffing the glue. That's all you do.
but
I mean, it's kind of like
but
a
see,
big.
that's the stuff that's what I'm saying. I love that stuff. Like for me, it's like, really? I get to paint it too? That's awesome.
Wait, hold on,
Like,
hold on. Do you like doing laundry?
oh yeah.
Oh, you're
I'm
fucking
I'm
nuts.
I'm
You're
See, Robbie,
nuts. I can't fold
I'm
my
one of those
socks.
people that just genuinely I can't relate to a lot of people. I'm learning as I get older, I learn more and more how rare my love of certain things are. I love doing anything that makes me feel like an adult, anything that makes me feel like I got a handle on something. I love it. I love getting dirty. I love putting my hands to things, seeing what I can do with it. I love it. And the more there is to it, the more excited I get. I'm like, wait, there's more? That's so cool. And the older I get, the more excited I am that there's still things like that, because you know you go along and you think you know everything. It's well, first of all, people don't really like you very much when you're like that.
Yeah, that's true.
so
I like
so
finding an extra fry in the bottom of like my bag or something when I get
that is
fries,
awesome.
but
No,
I
that is awesome.
I hate when I'm like playing a game and they tell me, "Oh, well, this has to be unlocked after a quick payment of 3.99," and I'm like, "More shit?" Like, really? And that's what I can like look at life with a little bit of stuff. It's like more things to learn, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It's just really how much you soak up that information. I mean, like, I could ask you, what's your dream scenario? Like, if you could pick everything, every cheat code to life, but what would your dream scenario be?
Oh, well, it's kind of along like if you had a superpower. I always said I would make up a superpower that I would know every language, including animal speak and body language. I think that that would be the ticket for me, just simply because I'm so invested in communication. And I really think that solid communication and practice within communication um, just opens up everything. So if I had the power to speak any language, I think that that would be a huge life hack. I don't know. I think it would unlock a lot of problems still, but that's what I'm talking about. I love puzzles. I love knowing there's more. I love hearing that there's more. I mean, it's like your podcast. You know, you interview and you have random conversations with people to increase your perspective and awareness and all of that stuff. So, you know, the more languages I got to do that kind of thing with, the better. You know, it's just honestly, there's no solving it. It's all about, am I having fun? And for me, that would make me have more fun because then I would get to interact with more people. Of course, sometimes trying to figure out what somebody's saying in another language is fun because you know you're both motivated to communicate, and there's all this hand gestures and everybody's laughing and everybody thinks certain things are funny. Like I remember my dad and my family went to Italy, and we told my friend Marco's grandmother his name. His name's Ron, and she went Ron, and she made like the sound of snoring. And apparently, in the comics in Italy, that's what a snore sound is. It's not Z's, it's Run. And she was like, "Oh, like this," and we were like, "What is she saying?" And Marco's like, "Oh, she's making fun of your dad's name." And it was super cute. And she knew no English, but it did not hinder her whatsoever in speaking in full Italian to us the entire time and hugging us and kissing us and feeding us. And it was an amazing day where had we not had Marco, we wouldn't have known anything of what was going on except for this woman uh, loved us and was happy to have us there and wanted to feed us.
See, believe it or not, my perfect idea of like maybe like a perfect scenario is like two people from different places, different countries, don't that don't speak the same, language or whatever, but don't really need to. Don't have a conversation, don't even talk, but they just do actions of peace, pour somebody a coffee without even saying a word, doing certain aspects of things where communication tends to at times fluff a lot of things up and really create a lot of tension where there really doesn't need to be any conversation in the first place. And from someone that has conversations a lot, I can tell you in my everyday life, I choose not to. I'll talk to someone if somebody talks to me, but even like saying like good morning, something like that, because a lot of the times it's not exactly the conversation you want. It's a conversation that's false conversation, such as somebody asking how you're doing as they're walking away from you. They're not sitting there actually wanting to be intimate with you. Going to a restaurant or something instead of just doing I work out in the mornings. Okay. So people walk by and go, "Hey, how's it going?" And they want to strike up a conversation. That is not a time to strike up a conversation, is when somebody's working out. So I just look at them like, give them the head nod. Then they want to sit there and chat. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Get away from me. Get away from me. Let me do my thing. But
Well, I mean, but you're putting off signals of communication.
well,
They're
that's
not
an
reading them.
energy
That's
I
kind of
give
like the
off though.
language.
Yeah. Like
Yeah, it's body language, it's everything. I mean, that's communication, right? Like if I were speaking animal speak, a lot of that is not verbal. A lot of that is signaling, eye contact,
But if I have
posture.
headphones in and you want to come up and talk, I'm like, motherfucker, can you see I'm listening to Celine Dion? What are you doing to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but they're not reading the signs. They're not being a good communicator. They're being a very selfish communicator.
Well,
Because that's what you learn about communication is that, it has to be a back and forth.
yeah. And well, I was watching a silent movie in like one of the old school silent movies, and it was just so crazy how anybody could watch this. Even if you're deaf, you could watch it. I mean, if you're blind, I'm sorry, you're probably missing out. But it's just the concept of like, you could understand exactly what was going on and get the same information as someone else could. When if you watch a movie now and someone says something, a certain phrase, a certain saying, somebody might take it a different way. Somebody might understand it differently than someone else that's sitting beside you listening to the same exact movie. It all depends on really how it's done, who the person is that is receiving the message. And I'm like, it's so much stronger when everything now, especially, is like visualized. Everything is seen through like a picture or seen through emoji, a GIF, a meme. There's certain things that really that we can all kind of relate to. Like when someone posts up a meme about depression, and then everyone laughs and subtly likes it, even though they all know what that feeling is. It's so much different than when you read something like a tweet or you read someone's phrase, because then it's kind of left open to interpretation in a way. And I don't know. I love that aspect of things, of like thinking of like a dream scenario for me is like a milkshake at a diner. And even if there's people in there, not saying anything to them, but just like the subtle head nod, and then just like kind of like just enjoying it that way. My first date's going to be in silence. Not my first date, with whoever that comes my way. Date's going to be in silence.
Yeah, I think that would be a fun way to play with somebody. I have a question for you, because this came up recently for me in regards to podcasting. Why did you put your podcast finally as a video feature on YouTube?
I don't know. I think I was kind of saving it already. The,
Yeah.
the video, I would only post the audio because I need to see facial expressions. I need to see where I'm going because I like to match people's energies when I talk to people. If it's a very high pitched one or very fast paced versus very slow and steady. I like to see the reactions of knowing that what I'm saying is, some people would just go, sure. And then a lot of times too, I've had conversations without video where I can hear their phone go off in the background. I'm like, you're on your fucking phone, aren't you? And they're like, oh, sorry, yeah. So.
I asked because I don't know if you know about Clubhouse yet, but it's you look like, see, if somebody saw your face right now, which they will because they get the YouTube version of this, they can see your butt pucker up as we're speaking.
Yep.
I enjoy that just because it is audio only, and of course it's kind of next tier, like testing of yourself, like you said, having a first date in silence, like stripping back the things that we're used to, or having an exercise in communication where you have to take back some of the cues that people normally have, the kind of visual expression that we get, and we have to like listen only to a voice and things like that. And also you get to, I mean, I don't know if you found this in podcasting, but listening to yourself back, or seeing how people respond to you from just that place, like if they hear your cadence or they hear your accent, or I've had a friend of mine, she reported that she wasn't feeling like a room that she went into really took her that seriously. And I told her, well, you have a very Baltimore accent, my
What are you
friend. And
talking about?
yeah, it's real. And I said, if you know, if you notice, like a lot of people who deliver information, they learn this like universal English cadence that is very posh and polished and all that stuff, and it kind of ups people's, way of seeing them, and kind of improves their credibility. I was like, just listening to you, people are probably, they're going to have to they're going to have to hear you multiple times before they understand how rich in knowledge you are about your particular field of interest. Because, up front, I'm going to tell you, they're judging you based on just the simple fact that you have this very thick Baltimore accent
Yeah,
that
people
they're,
don't know what that is. Like, I had somebody
yeah.
point it out to me. I didn't even know I had one. They're like, when you say like, who says bugaboo? And I'm like, I don't know where I got bugaboo from. I've always said like that's a bugaboo. And then when I was talking, when I ever say like, are you fucking kidding me? They're like, why do you say like like is there an A in there? And I'm like, no, but that's how I've said it. And then when Josh Adam Myers, famous comedian, he was on here and he's from Ocean City. Well, he would visit here all the time. Ryan Sickler, all those guys.
Hmm.
I would say ocean. He's like, no, hold on. Did you just You did the
Yeah, ocean.
oh
Going down the ocean, hon.
going down the ocean. And then Saturday, and then
Yeah,
Tuesday,
I
Tuesday.
really don't have it. People have said, "Wow, you're from that area. You don't speak that way." And I'm like, I don't really. I think it's because my mom always had news broadcasts up, and maybe I learned that that universal speaking more than I did the accents around. And two, I had a lot of issues growing up reading right away. So phonetics were really important as I was learning to read. So when I realized that people were putting letters in there that didn't belong, or I'm like, why are they saying wash? It's
Washington.
wash.
Washington. Like washer and
Washington
dryer.
D.C. Yeah, like why are they saying rough? It's a roof. Like, so for me, I think that I was kind of bound a lot in phonetics, and then once I started learning more and learning, I haven't learned another language, but I have studied other languages, and nothing to where I would actually be able to communicate with anyone, but I learned phonetics, and I learned grammar on another level, and that was cool.
I'm in a podcast right now. I'm in a podcast right now. My grandpa does that. I'm talking on the phone right
Oh,
now with you, and I'm like, oh my God. I don't even address it either. So that means I also probably do that at times too.
yeah, it's fine. It's cute. It's personal. I dig it. My boyfriend always laughs at me because I can't roll my R's. I
Really?
can't my yeah. If I do speak another language ever, um there's something about my tongue or my addiction, like the muscles in my mouth that are not able to make certain sounds. But he's always laughing at me. He's like, your passion for communication and learning other language is hilarious, because you're, you're never going to be able to speak some of these languages without a heavy accent. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And he's like, it's amazing to me because you suck. You suck so bad at accents.
It's funny with how much like I love silence because at the same time I also really enjoy hearing different accents and understanding where people come from when it comes like just understanding speech patterns as well. But body language too. There's different body language. Like I talk very physically with my hands. I like to do an all around motion with them, like I'm Italian or something, but I'm not. I like being able to read body language. I like being able to understand language in itself. When people say certain words, like I always found it really irritating when someone would correct a word that I would say wrong because I was just talking quick. I'm like, we're fucking hanging out. Like, why are you correcting me when you know what I mean? Why are you doing like it's like when somebody auto corrects something like duck, but you know what they mean, but you go duck. And it's like you're just fucking doing that to get me to react to that. It's like, what I mean. You're just adding more. It's like we need to keep continuing the conversation. Sometimes the conversation can end there, but people aren't always happy with it ending there. Like it's still that still talk to me type thing. And I'm like, man, I don't know. It's just so confusing because the way I think the world works is there's something universal about us all. I think we're all connected in some type of way, obviously, but in certain aspects, I think we're doing the long walk where we probably could slim it down to something even simpler and it be easy to understand and probably cross a lot of boundaries. I mean, if you can think of one thing that crosses the language boundary, what would that be?
Food.
Food? Yeah.
Um, everybody loves good food. Everybody, I think what you said when you were saying if you remove language, everybody I think interprets breaking bread as a sign of peace, sitting down, being disarmed, and eating together. It's such a point of vulnerability, I think, and communion that if you're the thing that's to be eaten, then you know the situation really quickly. But if you're sitting there eating with somebody, I feel like there's this kind of unspoken tryst between you, where in this moment there is no war. We're taking in nutrients together and we're experiencing this moment. So I would say food. I think food's the universal peace
And also
agreement.
the reaction of it when someone puts a good food in their mouth and you see their smile and their eyes light up like a firework just went off in their mouth compared to when someone eats something they don't like and you see the disgust. I mean, we know what the terms for happy and sad are. So it's possible to communicate more through that way, but we focus everything down on speech. And now speech, it doesn't mean the same thing as it did 10 years ago. words nowadays, there are words that mean something completely different than what they meant before. Everything's being labeled or taken and put into a new form, evolving into slang, whatever it was. But now so many words don't mean the same thing as they mean before. Some words that people are still learning mean bad things that are today. And it's like, how you got to understand that, especially with our language in America, that translate over to another country like Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, it's like 10 years in the past. I mean, they're still celebrating Kiss over there. Like, it's a brand. Did you hear this new band Kiss? I'm like, fucking, it was big in the 90s, you
Well, you
know?
know that our for I guess the lack of a better word, our evolution of language in America is kind of unique to America, right? Because Rico is actually, my boyfriend was telling me this because he's first generation Napolitan here in America. So he's American, but his father is off the boat Napolitan Italian. So he's like, in these other countries, they don't have the wavering of language that American language is. He's like, it's very grounded in rules. It's not as expressive. That's kind of what makes American English so challenging to learn, is because it's constantly evolving. It's constantly having new expression to it. Whereas in other countries, they're a lot more founded in their language. They've kind of declared that this is within this country the way to speak this. Even in Naples, Italy, Napolitan is a whole other language. It's a whole other slang. It's not written, and everybody who's in Naples knows Italian, like knows legit Italian, but then they also know this segue language that is Napolitan, that is just for Naples, Italy. And the written word is all in classic Italian, and that came from actually a declaration within the country itself of what they were going to use as their like common tongue. And I believe it came from um, I think it was Dante's Inferno, that particular how it was written in Italian. That's what they declared their like national like formulation of their language. So in other countries, I do believe that their language is purposely more limited than ours in a lot of ways. It's not supposed to be as open to evolution as American, and I think that's the reason why it's kind of uh, America uh, is so attractive to a lot of places, is because it's the birthing of so much that hasn't been. And this country, because of how we've run it for 250 years, has welcomed such innovation, and we haven't shackled things or baseline them or tried to cut the fat in a lot of things. In fact, we've encouraged people to express beyond what is normal or what is commonly accepted, because I think this country, at least that I can tell, is all about pushing boundaries and innovation and exploration, and that's why you see so much of that here as opposed to other places. At least that's been my observation of all of it.
I look at
um,
like the English language has just been slaughtered most of the time. I mean, most of the time there's complexity in words. I think words have also been corrupted in a way too, because depending on who can hit the hardest words possible or who's able to use the most challenging ones, I'd say, really can sway an argument into your favor. Like depending on who's a smooth talker, if you watch a lot of debates or a lot of arguments or a lot of whatever that goes on when it comes to scientific research studies, it's all about the words that you use. I mean, I've been in podcasts where the guy lost a bet to me. He's going to come on here and eat clam chowder and a hat. So I won that shit. But I was listening back to his podcast and I was listening over and over again. And so many people were messaging me like, "You're friends with this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's a good dude." But every example that he was hitting me with to counter my point was an example that had no inference into anything that was talking about what I was mentioning. He would just pick a different example to sway it to make yeah, it's a good example, but it has nothing to do with what I said. And it's like swaying an argument by using larger words. But then you look at the words done today, man, that's how it gets corrupted when it turns into using big words for an argument and then being able to slaughter them or change them to be able to fit your narrative or fit your opinion. I remember learning Romanian with a person I used to work with at the hotel. He actually was on this podcast. His name is Dragos. But I remember him telling me like, why, if you want this language to be taught everywhere so everyone can understand it and be able to speak together, why would you make it so damn difficult with all your fucking words? And I'm like, man, you can't really talk shit because you got an that a can either be said ah or on or and it's like all these different ways, and it's very hard just because of a squiggly line on top of it. But he made sense when it came to we have a bunch of words that they don't even have a letter for. They have to cut it out and just say the phrase. So like if it's like this, they're like, well, we don't have a word for that one, so it's got to be this. And I'm like, but that doesn't mean the same thing. He goes, yeah, but people will know what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, we sometimes just add filler stuff when there could be cut out to make it easier for more people to understand. And that's where I'm conflicted because I love the English language. I love language in general. I think it's beautiful. But at the same time, I don't want it to be so complicated where people don't ever have the need or want to learn that form of knowledge.
Yeah, I I'm a person who really likes, like I said earlier, I really like learning. So for me, the complicated um, doesn't doesn't bother me. I will say that part of the reason why I started public speaking was for exactly the reason that you brought up before, of that it seems to be that the eloquence and command of a stage that a leader would have or an influencer would have dictate so much about how much they're able to actually reach the world and impact. But and that's something that I really noticed, is that, you know, people would say like, oh, you know, like, but they speak so well. I'm like, are you listening to what they're saying? Like, are you processing what they're actually saying? Because, you know, we've just had a conversation, and by all accounts, the way that you're telling me you think and you feel about this is completely counter to what this politician or this person that you just said you're voting for thinks and feels. And now you're telling me you're doing that because they speak well, like, so that you're basically telling me that you've been romanced and charmed into doing something that otherwise you don't really believe in. And I'm like, and that I saw as a very it's a power that if you're not savvy to, and you're not willing to investigate and learn more within at least your own susceptibility, and you will be victim to it. It's kind of like, you know, being part of a grift. If you don't understand grifters, and you don't understand, you know, grifter, people that are con
I know,
people.
Grifter, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like if you're not hip to the con, you're gonna fall victim to it. So but
Well,
I think it's about.
here's an easy example for you. Instead of talking about a politician, for instance, Dr. Carl Hunt.
Mhm.
He I don't know if you ever heard his podcast on Joe Rogan where he said addiction was bullshit. I went to school studying chemical dependency and ended up studying psychology. So everything I learned based on influences around me and friends that I've lost have been that addiction is a horrible disease. But then listening to this guy tell me everything of why addiction is bullshit, I was able to understand that perspective, even though everything in my body was telling me that everything you've learned is that this guy is saying bullshit. But I understand his perspective, and he's right about a lot of things. Most rehab centers, for instance, they're not there to treat the issue. Drugs aren't really the issue, is what Carl Hunt was saying. He says that it's not really that this person's addicted to the drug. They're addicted to getting rid of the feeling that they're turning to the drug too, which makes a lot of sense. If you look at a person that's house just burned down and their wife just left them, they go to rehab for heroin. Those people are meant there to treat you to get you off heroin. You get off heroin, that person ends up going home and then turning to cocaine because, first of all, his house still burned down and his wife is still gone. So he's now going to find another outlet to deal with the pain, or he eventually kills himself. That is very true. If you look at statistical studies of rehab centers, people that go there, those people aren't there to treat the core issue. They're there to treat the drug issue. And that's why it's a money funding thing. Most people that get out of rehabs end up a lot of times going back. And I heard that it makes sense. You know, why? Especially, I like Dr. Drew. But Dr. Drew was one of the people that did celebrity rehab on television. If you truly care about a person, if you truly want to help them get off this so-called addiction, why would you fund it and put it on television for views? Why would you exploit someone's personal pain? And it really made sense. It made me look at Dr. Drew a little bit differently.
Well, it's there's a lot of things. What I was gonna say is that I think it's about taking it personally. Um, I'm trying, the more that I go throughout life, to not take these things so personally, to not be affronted by them. You know, you could look at it and any of these things and be like, well, why are you manipulating the situation like that? Or you're using manipulation tactics, or you know, you're exploiting. It's like saying something's propaganda. I mean, in my view, everything is. In my view, a visual. What's the point of putting a visual up if you're not eliciting some kind of response? If you're not trying to evoke something, but it's whether or not it's interpreted in a negative way, that kind of dictates whether or not people take it personally. But for me, it's important not to take anything personally, to try and take as little personally as possible, even if it seems like it's uplifting you, because you know, in terms of addiction or any of those things, or mental illness, it makes no difference, Robbie, if you think I'm the best thing since sliced bread. If I don't feel that way, then it doesn't matter. Like, it's wonderful that you might feel that way, but if I'm looking to you to gauge how I feel about myself, to me, in that, there's a problem. You know, you shouldn't look outside of yourself to gauge how you're supposed to feel. You just, I think you just take life as it is. And I think I think when you're talking about addiction and things like that, it's about seeking to control what you can't. And the more that you're willing to just live life and choose to keep going and seeing things the best way you can, and playing and trying to evoke more play, I think that that's really key, because you know, it's just, and it's about not taking it personally and not going, why did this happen to me, like you're anything special. We're not. We're fucking stardust. We're like floating around. Like we're like, we're probably a mite on a grain of sand in an infinite beach on an endless ocean. Like that's the scope of our existence. And so, you know, I think within that, for anybody to take all of this so personally, um, you're really robbing yourself, I think, of a lot of joy and a lot of play. And you know, within how vast all that is, it can feel ominous and lonely and crippling, or it can feel vast. It can feel infinite and fun and endless. And for me, it's always been like, why aren't we playing more? Like, why is like I said earlier, why aren't we playing?
Because
Why aren't you having fun?
people are angry about what happened. They're angry that their life wasn't like what they were told they were going to be. The issue is when you're a kid, the main thing is putting hope into your kid's eyes, which is very important. It's about giving your kid hope, telling them they could be anything they want. But then when they figure out, much like a lot of us are starting to figure out as you become an adult, is the concept of you can't really be an astronaut. You can't really be the president. A lot of times that we're in a system of meant to do these 9 to 5s, and that's just not people. You know, we're waking up a little bit, especially with everything shutting down and then kind of opening back up. People start to realize how much control they actually have. And I think it starts, a lot of these people out here are very fucking pissed off that their life didn't go the way they want. And you can say that, well, they had plenty of opportunities to do this. Yeah, not really, because when you're told that you can be this or you can do that, you kind of just think this thing's going to land in your lap. And then a lot of events hit, like bills, a lot of these things hit. And that's where I start to see things. I see that with millennials living at their house at the age of 30. I'm like, yeah, because life's fucking harder than it was before. It's not like
Yeah,
back in the
but
day.
Well, first of all, I was never told that. My parents did tell me I could be anything I wanted to be, but there was never, ever, ever a perspective that I could get away with that without a serious amount of hustle. I come from a small business family, and my family, I mean, half of my childhood, I didn't see my parents because they were off working, and my mom
Shit,
would feel
I
guilty
didn't see my
that
parents either, but I was still told I was going to be president or whatever the fuck. And I'm telling you right now,
my
I ain't the
parents
president.
never told me I would be anything. They said, look, it's not our job to tell you what you're going to be. It's to give you the tools necessary to empower you to do whatever it is that you seek to do in this world, and to make sure that you're a valuable asset to humanity, and that you're not going to detract from humanity. And in every instance when I was a little shit and I was becoming a problem, my parents basically wouldn't stand for it. They would be like, look, you can do that, but you can do that over there. You're not going to do that in our house. You're not going to do that here. And that's fine. If you want to live your life like that, that's cool. Go live it somewhere else, but you are not going to do that here, because we didn't raise you to be that kind of person. And they were firm, and they risked my wrath and how I felt about them to stand behind their integrity and behind what they felt was important, and I couldn't thank them more for that. It taught me that there are boundaries to how you treat people and how you take from this world, and you're not supposed to be an ungrateful little shit. You're supposed to have reverence for this opportunity and not squander things. And so if you're sitting around, going, why don't I have this, or why don't I have this? Well, take a very hard look in the mirror and ask yourself some serious questions about what you're putting in. And if you know you're not putting in what the guy who does have those things has put in, well, then you've got some work to do. And that's what I've always felt, is that, like, I have, Robbie, gotten what I've put into things, good or bad. And I've felt very, very viscerally the impact of my bad decisions or my good decisions. And I am a person who doesn't work a 9 to 5. I make my own schedule. I am self-employed, and I have been for a very long time. So this path is not easy. It takes a lot of personal accountability and personal insight, and a lot of self-critique. But I've been an artist my whole life, and that is the key thing that you have to do if you ever want to be good at art or want to be a professional artist, is you have to welcome endless critique, endless looking in the mirror, endless perspective. That's what you have to seek in order to be better and to grow. So for me, like I said, it's become a habit at this point. It's not even a question I, yeah, do I have moments where I sit around angry or something like that? Yeah, I'm human. Like, I have emotion, but the thing that brings me back is that I'm wasting time, like, to sit there, and it's not productive to overly sit in those situations and wallow. It's just not. It's very cyclical. I know where it's going to lead. I know it's not going to get better if I stay there. And so I get myself out of it. And usually if I'm really bad, I get myself out of it by making very accomplishable tasks, like, small lists that are, like he said, doing laundry or doing things that just pull me out of a rhythm of self-deprecation that isn't going to serve me, isn't going to serve the things that I want most in this world, and get me feeling good about my value to this world. And if I sit there and there's endless laundry to be done, and I'm just wallowing in my own shit, that laundry can be the thing that makes me feel really bad about myself tomorrow if I don't do it. So I do it. And then I do the next thing on my list, and I do the next thing. And then I get myself in this rhythm of productivity that ripples out from me in a way and makes me feel good about who I am as a person. And, you know, I, I just want to play. I just want to be here and experience and play as much as possible. And it's not fun staying in those areas of uh, limited thinking and anger and frustration. It's just not fun. And the older I get, the less long I stay in those areas, because I've learned to not take them personally, because usually the reason why those things are happening isn't personal. It's just, it is what it is. And the more you can accept that and move on from it, the happier you can really be, and the more happiness you can cultivate in other people. At least that's how I see it. And it is delusional. Like I don't want to sell you like something that I know it's all fucking delusional. We're all living a delusion. It's all play. Like for me, being on earth and being in these physical bodies, I think we've talked about it before, is like playing a video game, is like
No,
playing a
I understand
simulation.
you, but
Yeah.
my point was the fact that there's unrealistic expectations set upon you from when you're a child, at least most people, maybe not yourself, maybe not whatever, but there's
Well, there
unrealistic.
were.
Well,
I got put in a mental ward for it.
what I'm saying is when you end up hitting a certain age, there's a kind of a realization of like, I know plenty of people that work way harder than some of these people that can just create something like Post Malone made a song off fucking Roblox noises as just getting high and doing it. And he had that hit of creativity. Not saying he's not talented, but saying that I know plenty of people that work so many fucking hours late at night doing the hardest type of stuff. They don't have a McLaren. They don't have these types of things. And I think an issue hits is when you're supposed to give your kid hope of that they can do anything. But there was a giant, for a lot of millennials, a giant thing of you're going to change the world. And I feel like that aspect of things should not have been said because you're already putting too much pressure on the head. You want them to amount to as much as whatever they can possibly be. But like even for my buddy, his mom never told him he could do any of that stuff. His mom just said, be what you want to be. And he doesn't have an aspiration to want to be these types of things. And I know so many people whose parents were like, my kid's going to be number one. My kid's going to be the greatest. That kid's not fucking doing so great now. You know, the whole reason this podcast started was a buddy of mine was going to kill himself. His parents said, you're going to Harvard, you're doing this, you're doing that, had everything set out for him. And he's like, I don't want any of this, but I have so much pressure on my fucking head. That's my thing is like, there's a way to kind of mm,
I don't honestly, Robbie, I don't know the way, because I'm not a parent and I can't imagine
I'm
the
not a
the
parent
gravity.
either, but
I
I'm just
know,
trying
but
to
I
think of
can't
that
I
perspective.
I can't at this point in my life have anything but gratitude, because there were aspects of what you're talking about in my childhood for sure. I think it's hard for you to produce a little being and have nothing but love and want to see this thing succeed. And it's hard not to it's hard not to take that little being personally, because it came from you. Before you and your partner, this little being didn't exist. So to not have that person that you created be a reflection of you on some levels, and not take that little person and their actions personally, is really challenging. And my parents were really great parents, as far as I can tell. Now, did they make life very difficult on me at times? Did I have to break away from their influence many times in order to define who I am and to be authentic with the person and the adult that I want to be? Yes. But when I look at their way of teaching me and the value systems that they instilled in me, um, I find nothing but gratitude for them. And I also haven't really witnessed in my life any parent that does it amazingly well to the point where there's no issues. I feel
It's
like
it's just a line of when you tell a kid or you tell something that it has to, it can be this thing or it can aspire to be this. Let's just say that kid wants to aspire to be that. You know, a lot of thing is just trying to find yourself. I know plenty of people that have a very, very shitty job, but they're the happiest people I possibly know. They have no aspiration to want to be president or no aspiration to change the world or do something ever amounting on their shoulders, because they found themselves. They found true peace. Much like yourself, you might not have $1 billion, but you're happy or you're feeling like you're doing great right now. You know, that aspect of things, you know, you're probably leaving a toxic work environment, being able to do your own thing is something that maybe a lot of people will be like, I don't know if you should do that, but you fucking wouldn't, you don't regret it. You love doing it. That's what I'm saying is there's this aspiration that you can be an astronaut, you can be a scientist, you can be a fucking doctor. For so long, that was like the safe job. Go to medical school, go to this. A lot of people didn't do that. I know plenty of people that haven't followed that career path, and they're the happiest fucking people. My buddy's out in California right now, just fucking doing a construction company, and his parents hate the shit out of him. But they told him for so long he was going to be a like a football star and all this shit. He's having the time of his life out in California and really enjoying what he's doing. And I'm like, who's to define what you should be? Why are people putting an aspiration on what you should be? And why don't you just look inside yourself and find out who you really are? Is my kind of point here. It's not about
Yeah.
just you. If anything, it's a
I think it's
team.
a solid point. I think it's just how much are you going to let the opinions of your parents um, be what shackles you to who you actually are. And I I learned in therapy, which my family helped fund for the first part of my therapy experience. I learned that I am an adult. I can take in my parents' suggestions and feelings and I can consider them. And I don't have to listen to them if I don't want to. If I don't want their thoughts to be, the thing that, basically defines who I am or how I see myself. I don't have to do that. They're just people like other people. Now there are people that matter immensely to me. And I also feel like for me to run away from them or their perspective is karmically not going to give me a lot of cool things, because I think when you walk into challenges, there's amazing things get unlocked in that. If you stick around, like people go, oh, for me it has to be super toxic for you to, and super abusive for you
Yeah, for you to
to
fed
run
up.
away. Yeah, I mean, there's been times when I have walked away, like I've said, where I have denied my parents access to me. But in those times where I've forged out on my own, I I messed up a lot, and I realized that there's a lot of people out there that are not as concerned about my success. In fact, most people that are not concerned about my success or who I am or any of that more than my parents. Once I've walked away from them in reflection, they actually have cared the most about me out of anyone in this entire fucking world, about who I am and what I am. Now, whether or not that's because selfishly they consider me a reflection of them, it's kind of irrelevant. And it's just simply that in their sphere, in their influence, they have been dedicated to my betterment. They have been dedicated to my education. They have allowed me to argue with them, and they've allowed me to express things that the everyday person would never give a shit about. And more than likely, most people outside of my parents are looking to get something from me that they want out of the situation, and they will do whatever they can to manipulate the situation in order to get that from me. Now, whether or not that's, you know something good or something bad, that's kind of up for me to determine. But my parents are the only beings that I can think of that were really invested in me as a person and as a success, uh, consistently my entire life, and they have not wavered from that. And yeah, it's not a very peaceful place to go. Like visiting my parents doesn't give me a lot of peace, but I don't think that that's supposed to be their role in my life. I think they're supposed to challenge me. I think they're supposed to make me better. I think they're supposed to offer a place where I'm that I am scrutinized, that I am like put on a higher platform, and it's kind of the only place that I can accept that kind of scrutiny because they are the people who brought me into this world for better or for worse. Yeah, I didn't choose that. At least that you can tell up front. My therapist actually told me that I did choose it before I was born. That was her faith and that was her philosophy, is that we actually pick the people that we're born to, and through that choice we encounter certain karmic truths in this lifetime. It's kind of like we pick the simulation that we end up running. But whether you believe that or not, I don't that's up to whoever's listening. But it always made sense to me when she said that, because in every other situation I get to choose how I feel. I get to choose how I'm going to act. But that's like the one choice that we can sit there and go, well, I didn't choose to be born. And if you follow her perspective, you in fact did choose. And now, becoming an older person of a certain faith, I do believe that. I believe that I probably could have stayed in the spiritual world and just infinitely played in that space and just felt love and acceptance and connection and didn't need to communicate like this, like use my voice and we're all sharing thoughts and things like that, and we're infinite. Why did I choose to come to earth? Why did I Because being infinite, I would imagine you get really fucking bored, and sometimes sometimes you want to mix it up. Sometimes you want to experience something that's different. It's kind of like that part in the movie Troy where Brad Pitt's character looks at the girl worshiping the gods, and he's like, the gods envy us. They envy us because everything here is more precious, because at any moment we can die. And with that mortality, everything becomes richer. Taste, experience, love, all of those things become intensified because it could end at any moment. And the realization of that concentrates everything. And I always love that quote because I think it's so true. I think that if you were to be an infinite being and time didn't matter and it was just forever, you'd play more. You'd run simulations where you get to experience things that you don't get to experience a lot of the time. I don't know, that
I
just
think
makes sense to me.
a lot of people realize that someone else is also having a hand in the cookie jar, having a hand on the steering wheel, when the only person's hands should be on the steering wheel should be your own. We look throughout life for influences, for decisions, for answers, for to questions that I don't think necessarily anybody really has answers to. I think a lot
Hmm.
of it takes to deep dive into oneself. I mean, I'm at fault, I would say, for countless of times. Sit in the middle of the road or something, or if I'm driving late at night and I just wonder, "Man, what's the fucking where's the route? Where am I supposed to go?" But it's really where I feel like I'm doing okay. Where there are days where I sit there and wonder why I'm even alive, and then when I'm doing something that I actually enjoy, I'm not even thinking that way. I think that's the road to pursue, is when you're not having those thoughts, when you're not needing a drug, you're not needing something to get rid of those dark thoughts inside of your head. You feel like time slips by so quick, but you understand every moment that goes by of it. Those are places that you're supposed to be, but a lot of people talk about how miserable they are, all dreading going into work. I don't think work always has to be that type of thing. I think you need to find where you fit, whether that thing is making IKEA furniture or whether it's doing whatever, being a rapper, being whatever. I don't care. If you feel like you're making sense of it all, like the fact, you're going to be a happier person when you find out what you're doing with your life. And if you're a happier person, you're going to have better communication with people around you, which creates a more positive effect around the world. And
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult because, like I said, There's a lot of things telling you that you got to play it safe. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I'm like, it's just not the sense of the world anymore. There's so much like guys who are famous vloggers. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like in a million years, nobody in the world would have thought you could make Minecraft videos and get paid for it. But dude,
So what you're saying is the millennials did change the world.
millennials,
They
yeah,
did.
I don't think
Um,
individually it's a group
no,
effort.
but that's the point, right? Like, I think, like I said, I think, I think to take, yeah, do I think it's unfair for a parent to just say you're going to be a lawyer? Yes, I think that's awful. I think that wasn't my experience. My parents just gave me access to whatever I was interested in, because the more they did that, the more I shut the fuck up. I was out of their hair. Like it, they noticed I liked playing with my hands. They noticed that I liked making art. So they just downloaded whatever art. They just kept giving it to me. And the more they gave it, the more I picked it up, the more I was like using it. And so when they said you're probably going to be an artist, that didn't feel bad to me. I was like, yeah, I probably am going to be an artist, because out of everything that I do, this consistently brings me joy. And so whenever I'm talking to people who are lost or anything, and the point of meditation, I think, is to kind of watch, like you said, the mind's eye and things like that, is to watch how your mind goes, where your mind goes to, and what it's addicted to going to in thoughts. And whenever I'm coaching people to kind of get out of, you know, I mean, the limited times that I've done this, but when they're in a headspace that doesn't feel good to them, I'm like, and they want to break out of a mold that they're not enjoying, I'm just like, what brings you joy? Like, if you don't know what brings you joy, that's the first thing that you have to kind of pay attention to and meditate on. What brings you joy? And there's lots of moments, there's lots of things, but the more that you can understand those things, and then seek out more of those moments or cultivate more of that, you'll be onto something and you'll figure it out. And there's so many tools now with the internet and technology that you literally, like you said, you can make anything into a profession that can make you money. You just got to do it, and you just got to figure it out, and you have to have enough passion to seek it, and to consistently seek it, and to consistently play with it. And if it stops bringing you joy, then maybe it's time to change it up, but chase the joy. Don't chase what other people tell you. You gotta look inside. My mom, she always used to say, listen to your gut. And I never understood what that meant, but there is it's a very intense response that comes from your solar plexus that kind of makes your body vibrate when you know, like when you're in a bad situation, you know that you should leave. It's that kind of thing that, like, if you're listening outside of yourself, you're going to stay in that bad situation for you. But if you listen to yourself and you don't try to talk yourself out of it, you just move, you just act, you're usually following your gut. You're following yourself. You're following all the things you know about yourself. And for me, you'll never go wrong if you do that, ever. You might die, but hey, you lived purposely. You didn't listen to somebody, you didn't have somebody talk you out of it. There's nobody to blame when you do that. The only person that you can look at is yourself in the mirror for the things that you chose to do. And for me, that gives me peace, because if the only person I can blame is myself, that brings me peace. I know I made the right choice. No matter what happened, I can accept the consequences of it.
It's also,
It's
yeah, it's
yeah.
very toxic to try and deflect something onto somebody else, saying it's their fault because they caused this. But
Yeah.
really, you got to realize how much control you have in your own life. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I think we all realize the government probably has more say in our life than we do. But at the same time, you have to realize that even when it comes to simple stuff, you have to understand it all kind of boils down to your final decision on things too. Whether you want to get that tattoo, whether you want to do this or you want to do that, it ends up going down into your hands. You know, you can keep blaming somebody else to feel like, oh, I must pass the blame, but in the long run, it's really all up to yourself. You know, if you feel unhappy in where you are in your life, you have the ability to change it if you want.
Yeah, I think you just gotta examine the ways that you're acting or thinking and realize whether or not it's cultivating the kind of life you want. And if the answer is no, well, then you got some work to do. And it doesn't have to be ominous or awful. Like we we do things all the time that don't matter, like just take a walk for the day. Like, how about you get excited about taking a journey and take a small step towards something? You don't have to take in the whole scope of where you want to go. Like, I want to be a famous blah blah blah. That's a goal, that's fine, but if you're constantly putting that perspective in your face every single day, it can kind of cripple you sometimes. Sometimes it's just fun to know that you're just taking a step, and give yourself a pat on the back for taking a step, because it's one step closer to the things you want. And why not have fun with that? Why not go, oh, what if I want this? What could I do? What's maybe a little thing I can do to maybe call that to me more, and start playing, start seeing, you know, I
Sometimes you just gotta want to be Amish. You just got to.
well, sometimes that might be
Dream
it.
big.
Like, that might be the happy spot, man. Like, there are people like that, and I commend them. Like, if they found that joy from that way of living, that's awesome, man. Like,
Just
that's
do
great.
it. Just
Yeah, yeah. But if you don't get off on the journey and you're not having fun with it, then I think that it's time for you to switch it up and change,
every
switch and pivot.
step you take in your life should be in the direction of the thing that you want.
Yeah, yeah. Or there's a guy, I'm hoping his name is Paz. He actually, I'm hoping to have him on my podcast and interview him. But I met him on Clubhouse, actually, and he actually helps gang members actually get jobs and reform. And hopefully I get this right. He says there's three kind of actions. There's basically rest. Um, I'm gonna get it wrong. I'm gonna have him reiterate it, but it's basically rest, or recreation, things that make you money, and then things that is the last one. I knew I was gonna, but essentially, um, rest is important too. Like, so, if you're, because you've worked out, if you don't recover, then you can't keep getting gains, because you'll blow yourself out. So yeah, you
That
have to give yourself permission. Yeah.
is called it's called overexertion. And
Yes.
first of all, that's bullshit because I've worked out every day for going on 9 years and I don't have any fucking problems. So
Well, no, I mean, it's not about working
I
out
know
every
I'm just
day.
fucking with you. But I've done it every day. I am immune to over exertion when it comes to lifting.
Well, I mean, well, maybe, but like, that's you right now. I mean,
26, making it to 26.
yeah, you're still young.
3 more years.
That's, I mean, I'm not trying to belittle where you're at. It's a good age. And I've definitely met 26-year-olds that have had physical boundaries when it comes to working out. Excuse me, I'm clearing my throat. I apologize.
Oh, she
I'm
coughed. Everything she said is wrong. Everyone.
That's fine. If
It's great
I
to
have
hear.
been dealing with
COVID.
this COVID. I'm on my last couple days of my quarantine. So I'm
You
dealing with
infected me
it.
through a Zoom call. How dare you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can handle it. You look You just said that you're immune to anything. You don't blow out.
I'm immune
Nothing
to
hurts you.
working out. But when it comes to cold, I don't know. I don't trust my immune system, even
I
though it
will
needs a
say,
certain amount of stress. I did not know that.
huh?
Your immune system, they say that no stress is good for you. Not true. Actually, you need a moderate level of stress because it keeps your immune system on guard. When actually you have
Yes.
a rest day and you choose to relax, is when you let your immune system try and recover or lower down, and it ends up getting you more sick.
We're constantly under stress. In fact, we're constantly under pressure. Just gravity itself. I was with a PT, and she was like, everybody talks about posture. Like there's this permanent posture that you could be in. She's like, you can have good posture, but she's like, good posture means about being aware of your body and its positioning, but literally you're being pushed down by gravity all the time. So it's literally impossible to go without stress. Our bodies are being put to elements all the time. So having stress on certain levels and experiencing pressure in the world, it's a continual. We're not really conscious of it, just like we're not really conscious of breathing until we can't breathe. Like or the beat of our heart, or all these little micro things that are going on continually in our bodies. It's constantly going, it's constantly replenishing ourselves. What is it, like every 7 years we're a completely different being, because
All
our
your
our
cells. Yeah.
yeah, all our cells have died and replicated into
Pretty
a
sure
new
I
form.
told you that.
You might have.
You
I,
quoting me against me? Really?
I don't care. We have the ability to look back. So you could have said that.
Check
I
the
don't know.
fossil records. We
I
always
mean,
go
nobody cares what I said anyway because I coughed.
we always go deep. Always
Yeah,
go.
we do. We do. I love it, man. I'm so happy you asked me to come on today. I apologize. I haven't listened to the podcast that you sent me the other day yet.
It's just
Um,
me and my buddy going back and forth about Mariah. You'll get a laugh out of it, I know.
I always like listening to you talk. I'm just backlogged. I have I'm backlogged in my listening. Like when you're trying to put media out there, it's hard to take media in,
Yeah.
like it's hard to catch up on what other people are doing. I think that's honestly the thing that depresses me the most. If I am to think about depression with me, is feeling like I can't be more people. Feel like I'm limited in within what I am, and that there's only so much that I can actually get to. I mean, I'm
Ah,
you
you're
know,
doing great, kid.
I mean, I am, but like I want, that's the thing, right? Like you're always like wanting more, and you're
I
always
don't.
wanting to be more. I mean, I do. I constantly do. I always want to see what I can get into and
Who
what
wants
boundaries
to
I
be
can push.
famous today? That sounds awful.
What?
Who would want to be famous today? It sounds awful. I just watched Demi Lovato on Joe Rogan, and everything was like celebrity problems. I'm like, you fucking entitlement. Like, you want to talk about entitlement? Well, I couldn't, I was getting picked on at school, and then I got a hit TV show, and then I was like, are these friends my actual friends? And I'm like, I get it. I get it. But those celebrity problems are so minuscule compared to some other shit that other people are doing. There's my buddy was freezing his ass off when Texas was frozen. He had to pull his dryer into his house to be able to heat his room. That's the episode I sent you. So it was like fucking hearing that and listening to Demi Lovato talk about she didn't know if everyone would like her new haircut. I'm like, oh, fuck me. You kidding me?
Well, I mean, it is a problem, though. I think the thing that makes us not
No,
so
don't get me started on Demi Lovato.
no, 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 no. I think the thing that makes us lacking compassion is that somebody is actually interviewing her. Somebody is actually, you know what I'm
That
saying?
sounded
Like,
so bad.
well, I'm just saying that like people don't care when people care. Like the the thing of it is like people sit
Amy,
there and go, how many people do you need to
no,
freaking hear about your haircut for you to feel something? Like, who
don't defend
fucking
her.
cares? Like, people stop caring
I
once
got a haircut.
there's
Nobody even noticed.
why. I mean, I don't know what you look like
She just started cutting.
consistently
I said,
enough.
Jesus, hold on.
You
Don't
have
you know
good
you?
hair.
I don't. She told me it was growing gray.
That's okay.
She said, you're going gray hair. How old are you? I'm like, I'm stressed. Leave me alone. Can't handle
It's
the
fine. I
immense
like gray
problems
hair.
of the
My
world.
boyfriend won't let his go go speckled. He always is having me dye it. He's like, "No, man, I don't want to have gray hair right now." And I'm like, "I don't
I
see
don't want to talk
why."
about it. I'm upset.
Well, okay. For me, you're gonna hate what I have to say, but it's one, worrying about it won't make them won't make you less gray. And two, you should probably be happy that you have hair, because at my brother's, when he was your age, he was starting to bald. So if you want a real reality hit, you should be happy that you have such a dense amount of hair on top of your head, because it could not be there. So
Amy, where can people find you at? I got to use the restroom, so I'm sorry. Have
oh,
to.
sure, no problem. Go use the restroom. They can find me at the Apprenticeship Diaries. It's the underscore apprenticeship underscore diaries on IG. That's my podcast. And then A Nicholls Tattoos is where people can find me when it comes to my tattoo work. And anicholstattoos.com is my website. So if you'd like to get work done, that's the way that I like to get business,
And I'll make
is
sure I
through my
link it all in
website.
the description. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Amy, for joining me on today's episode of Out of the Blank podcast.